Good morning, everyone. Muy buenos días a todas y todos. This is a hybrid session of the Permanent Council. We have delegations present in the Hall of the Americas and we have delegations connected virtually. Between these two groups, we have the following delegations participating this morning: Antigua and Barbuda, Argentina, Bahamas, Bolivia, Canada, Colombia, Costa Rica, Dominica, Ecuador, El Salvador, the United States of America, Grenada, Guatemala, Haiti, Jamaica, Mexico, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, and Uruguay. We have quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Bien. Buenos días. Distinguidos representantes permanentes e interinos de los Estados miembros, senador Christopher Dodd, asesor principal especial para las Américas del Gobierno de Estados Unidos, señor Luis Almagro, secretario general, embajador Néstor Méndez, secretario general adjunto, distinguidos observadores permanentes, público en general que está conectado con nosotros. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this important discussion on integrationism and inter-Americanism. We are honored to have with us today Senator Christopher Dodd, whose expertise and leadership on this issue has been instrumental in promoting a more inclusive and united society. As we gather here today, it is clear that the world is facing many complex challenges that threaten our social, economical, and political stability. From rising inequality and social injustice to political polarization and cultural conflicts, our societies are increasingly divided and fragmented. At the heart of these problems lies the issue of integration, how we can create more inclusive and cohesive communities that respect diversity and promote equality. Inter-Americanism, integrationism, the philosophy that guides our discussion today is the belief that we must work together to overcome this division and build a more integrated society. Through the discussion, we hope to explore the challenges and opportunities of integrationism and how we can work together to promote a more inclusive and united future. Y todo esto no arrancó hace poco tiempo, arrancó hace mucho tiempo. Estamos desde el año 1889 bregando por un ejercicio de interamericanismo y de esfuerzos por estar más juntos que nunca. No tengo que recordar a nadie el Congreso de Panamá del año 26, donde Bolívar hizo lo que tenía que hacer. Un detalle, estudiando este fin de semana sobre el año 1889, encontré que el patrón plata fue el eje con el cual se suponía que nos comunicábamos comercialmente. No hay manera de encontrar una personalidad en este proceso de panamericanismo, integración continental. Es imposible. Es imposible conversar con ustedes y decir Roosevelt, Kennedy, está plagado de actores que entendieron la noción de entendimiento entre nosotros. Seguramente las perspectivas que tengamos sobre un proceso de mayor cohesión, algunos la miren desde el territorio de la inversión, generación de trabajo, cohesión. Senador Christopher Dodd en Los Ángeles fue una pieza fundamental y ahí uno de los trabajos centrales fue el tema migratorio. Y vaya si es un tema que aún hoy nos compromete y nos compromete como como un dato de la realidad. Decía Martí que la unión hace la fuerza y la cooperación hace el progreso. La unión hace la fuerza y la cooperación hace el progreso. Y el tema es entonces seguir bregando en este camino, no abdicar de nuestra intensidad, de nuestra militancia, de nuestra dedicación. No es novedad para nadie, lo sabemos todos, senador Dodd, que este continente tiene todo para ser feliz. Todo. Agua, tierras arables, energía, absolutamente todo. Lo que a veces no tenemos es la cohesión suficiente entre todos para entender que más convergencia nos va a dar más felicidad. Puede que esté yo muy solo en esto, pero no tengo, me parece, la idea de que lo importante sea ser más en términos de potencia en el mundo como continente, sino ser más felices entre nosotros mismos. Básicamente esa es la idea. Recorrer un camino de mayor cohesión hacia una idea de mayor felicidad y de mayor integración y de mayor entendimiento entre todos. Soy muy respetuoso de los momentos de conferencias internacionales, de los momentos donde tenemos un punto de entendimiento. Pero creo que los pueblos están pidiendo, por encima del entendimiento político, entendimiento fáctico en la realidad, convergencia fáctica en la realidad. Y ahí, perdóneme, Christopher Dodd, usted conoce por sí mismo y por su hermano la vida de mi país, y me perdonan los queridos colegas. Mi presidente siempre está diciendo, el presidente Luis Lacalle Pou, lo que podemos hacer por nosotros mismos, y no mirando hacia el otro, sino hacia nosotros mismos, como continente único. En estas mismas horas está haciendo un ejercicio imponente en su país. No sé si ya largó el cohete, pero está por largar ese cohete que va a hacer un ejercicio de mayor peso, mayor volumen, mayores toneladas. Este país puede grandes cosas y nuestro continente unido con este país también pueden grandes cosas. Todos podemos grandes cosas. Por eso quería platicar sobre este ángulo, quizás más filosófico, más de sentirnos confiados entre nosotros mismos para poder, de alguna forma, entender que ese es el único camino inteligente que tenemos por delante. El único. Era cuanto quería decir, y ahora voy a seguir con el protocolo, tal cual me lo manda mi embajador adjunto, así que, perfecto. Entonces vienen ahora las palabras del secretario general de la organización, don Luis Almagro.
Gracias, señor presidente. El 14 de abril de 1890 se constituyó en esta ciudad la Unión Internacional de Repúblicas Americanas en el marco de la primera Conferencia Internacional de los Estados Americanos, la Organización de los Estados Americanos, nuestra organización, principal foro político del hemisferio, es hija de esta iniciativa y de estos esfuerzos. Agradecemos la presencia del embajador Chris Dodd y agradecemos al embajador Frank Mora por haber solicitado esta sesión del Consejo Permanente. Esta Casa de las Américas es el sitio indicado para llevar a cabo la conmemoración de este aniversario de Día de las Américas de la Semana Panamericana. Quienes asistieron a la reunión en 1890 en representación de los 18 estados participantes, no solamente estaban colocando las bases para la posterior creación de la Unión Panamericana y de la OEA, sino adelantándose a su tiempo, de forma premonitoria, a la primera institución de su clase en este mundo, que luego sería seguida por la Sociedad de las Naciones y la Organización de Naciones Unidas. Hoy en día, en este espacio hemisférico, continuamos honrando el propósito de un foro político y jurídico que atiende los principales temas de interés regional, representados en la defensa y promoción de la democracia, los derechos humanos, la seguridad multidimensional, el desarrollo integral. El espíritu del panamericanismo se mantiene dentro de los ideales de preservación de la paz, eso que dicen los cuatro rincones, las cuatro esquinas de esta sala. Y la solidaridad entre nuestros Estados miembros, la colaboración entre las naciones de las Américas. Sin ir más lejos, la próxima semana la ciudad de Denver acogerá la primera cumbre de Ciudades de las Américas, en la que la OEA tendrá un papel destacado en temas de migración y transformación digital. Con ese mismo espíritu de cooperación asumimos también en los últimos años como organización la coordinación regional junto a la OES de la pandemia del COVID-19. Señor Presidente, continuaremos trabajando incansablemente para que la democracia sea el único sistema legítimo de gobierno en la región, con el respeto y promoción de los derechos humanos, a pesar de las amenazas que acechan, a pesar de las tentaciones totalitarias y dictatoriales. La Carta Democrática Interamericana, que hemos definido como la verdadera Constitución para las Américas, debe ser la mejor guía para contar con países donde el respeto a la institucionalidad, el Estado de Derecho y los derechos humanos sean la constante. Lo son la constante de las palabras de Bolívar en el Congreso al que hacía referencia el presidente del Consejo. En el hemisferio todavía debemos mucho a nuestros pueblos. Temas prioritarios como la pobreza, la inequidad, el deterioro del medio ambiente, la corrupción, la inseguridad, las migraciones, así como el respeto por los derechos de las mujeres, minorías, comunidad LGBTI de los pueblos originarios, los pueblos afrodescendientes y otros más. Debemos continuar haciendo parte de nuestros trabajos cotidianos en estas prioridades. Hace 2 años, el presidente Joe Biden, a un par de cuadras de donde hoy estamos reunidos, dijo en su palabra de conmemoración del Día Panamericano y de la Semana Panamericana que esta es la mejor manera de celebrar los principios democráticos que nos unen y expresamos nuestra determinación de trabajar juntos para superar los desafíos comunes que tenemos por delante. Tenemos la capacidad de alcanzar ese futuro si nos congregamos y nos unimos en torno a un liderazgo democrático y basado en principios, cimentado en el Estado de Derecho. Coincidimos con las palabras del presidente Biden. Esos son los principios básicos que hacen parte del día a día de nuestra organización. Y por ese motivo nuestro lema de trabajo diario es llevar más derecho para más gente. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Muchas gracias por sus palabras, secretario general. A continuación me complace otorgar la palabra a nuestro invitado especial, el senador Christopher Dodd, asesor principal especial para las Américas del Gobierno de los Estados Unidos. Senador Dodd, bienvenido a la Casa de las Américas, a la OEA. Tiene usted la palabra.
Gracias. Con su permiso, yo estuve con el presidente Biden este fin de semana pasado en Irlanda y pasamos 3 días, pero como si fuera 100 días, en 3 días. Entonces, viajando con él es difícil. Entonces, con su permiso, yo voy a hablar en inglés. Y muchas gracias a todos para la invitación de pasar un tiempo con ustedes. I know this room very well. Over my 36 years in the Congress, I was at many, many meetings, celebrations, various other events here in this wonderful building that has witnessed so many incredible achievements under the leadership of the Organization of American States. So I thank you, Mr. Secretary General, first of all, for your wonderful welcome. I feel very privileged to be here with all of you. I want to thank as well Ambassador Washington Abdallah and to the distinguished members of the Permanent Council, permanent observers, Mr. Secretary, Assistant Secretary General, the OAS staff who are here as well, and members of civil society for the chance to join you this morning with some brief remarks, and members of the civil society who are also with us for the chance to join you. Today's remarks, 4 years to the date of our celebration of Pan-American history and cooperation. I'm also delighted to be back in this room, this historic building, the House of the Americas, which it is called, for this session of the Council. On the occasion of Pan American Day and Pan American Week, I bring you warm greetings from President Joe Biden as his special advisor for the Americas. I also want to acknowledge the leadership of Ambassador Frank Mora, who we are so pleased to have at the OAS at long last. Frank, welcome here. Once again, back in a place where you deserve to be. It is fitting to begin today by recalling that this year marks the 240th anniversary of the birth of the great American liberator, Simón Bolívar, whose ideal of hemispheric cooperation inspired the creation of the Inter-American System. In furtherance of Bolívar's vision, on April 14, 1890, 18 nations of this hemisphere came together to form the International Union of American Republics, the oldest, as has been noted, the oldest regional international organization in the world, and the precursor to this, our modern organization of American states. Today, the OAS consists of diverse independent states dedicated to the principles of advancing peace, development, security, and democracy throughout the Americas. On my way into this hall, I had the chance once again to see the peace tree that President William Howard Taft planted below in the Aztec patio 100 years or more ago. The peace tree continues to stand as evidence of the deep and strong roots of the Organization of American States. Let me be clear. Joe Biden, my very good friend and President of the United States, is a champion of this organization. He asked me to share with each of you a personal pledge of his and the United States' commitment to the Organization of American States. The United States remains deeply interested in the future of the OAS and the Inter-American System. Colleagues and friends, I believe strongly that we need to once again recapture the spirit of Pan-Americanism that informs so much of our shared history, but our region's future destiny as well. It seems odd, even quaint, I guess, to talk about Pan-Americanism in light of the differences we see in the region today. But the reality is that regional integration is now a fact. In some ways, we are promoting regional integration as various governments throughout the hemisphere. But in many instances, it is occurring in markets, in the private sector organizations, universities, the NGOs that exist, faith-based institutions, and by changing demographics. Clearly, as former Secretary John Kerry, my former Senate colleague, stated in this hall 10 years ago, the era of the Monroe Doctrine is over. But I would also add, so is the era of undervaluing the resources, both human and natural, that our Americans offer itself and the world in which we live. Our region's dynamic and integrated relationships was on display at the 9th Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles. The region's leaders came together to reaffirm shared goals, promoting sustainability, resilience, and equity across the hemisphere, advancing economic prosperity, strengthening democracies, mitigating the effects of climate change, fostering clean energy transitions, creating more resilient public health infrastructure, increasing access to digital technologies, and protecting the most vulnerable among us. That was a tall order, but yet every one of those subjects was thoroughly discussed in Los Angeles Summit this past June. Priority U.S. initiatives to address these common concerns and opportunities include America's Partnership for Economic Prosperity, the Los Angeles Declaration on Migration and Protection, the America's Health Corps, and the U.S. Caribbean Partnership to address the climate crisis of 2030, or PAC 230, as it is called, which was launched by Vice President Harris at last year's Summit of the Americas. In our flagship initiative to promote climate adaptation and resilience, as well as clean energy programs across the Caribbean region and elsewhere. This comprehensive, goal-oriented approach is supporting the Caribbean region, our Caribbean neighbors, and others with the urgency that this moment demands. The Biden-Harris administration's root causes strategy was released in July 2021 and is making critical investments in addressing the drivers of migration from Central America with a sharp focus on good governance. Our call to action, a public-private partnership supporting long-term development in Central America, is one way in which we are helping to create economic opportunity in the region, to build a momentum To build the momentum generated under this successful initiative, Vice President Harris launched the next chapter by announcing the Central America Forward Plan. As of February 2023, companies within Central America, America Forward, had committed more than $4.2 billion in investment to the region. Central America Forward also includes the U.S. government's commitments to complement private sector investments in the region, including a new government national Northern Central American Investment Facilitation Team, and commitments to combat corruption and protect labor rights in the region. Mr. Chairman, as we work to move forward with these efforts, we will also be hosting local leaders from throughout the Western Hemisphere at the inaugural City Summit of the Americas in Denver, Colorado, later this month, in fact, next week. Over 2,000 local leaders and organizations have registered for this two-day conference. We are very pleased to have the OAS engaged in this summit on open government and regional migration. This is the first time ever to hold such a summit of local leaders throughout the Americas. Our efforts to improve economic conditions, strengthen security measures, and promote democratic values must not be left alone to the heads of state, but must also include efforts at the local level throughout the hemisphere. And yet, despite these advances, we now know there is growing impatience for tangible progress in the region. Efforts by leaders to make democracy deliver have fallen short, to put it mildly. As the premier multilateral institution in the Americas, many have looked to the OAS to find solutions to political impasses, while others in the region continue to question its viability and capacity to address these threats. Mr. Chairman, our Pan-American, now the Inter-American community, is bound together and strengthened by diverse multilateral institutions, and they too are indispensable to achieving our common aspirations. Their focus and memberships may vary, as we all know. Some include the United States as members, others do not. But in every case, the effectiveness of these multilateral institutions depends upon members' willingness to step up and to meet their obligations here as well as in the hemisphere. Mr. President, at the OAS, this means speaking up and defending democracy anywhere where it is under threat or assault, just as we committed to do this year in Los Angeles. And in keeping with the core mission of the organization, we must step up and advance the full implementation of the Inter-American Democratic Charter. That is what our leaders envisioned when they gathered 22 years ago on that fateful and dreadful day of 9/11, 2001, to adopt the Democratic Charter. Former President Jimmy Carter, a great friend of this organization, who attended every OAS General Assembly in Washington and even hosted the assembly in Atlanta, Georgia in 1974 when he was governor of the state of Georgia. He understood the point clearly in his speech inaugurating the first lecture series of the Americas in 2005 before this very council. Let me quote him if I can. President Carter called on, quote, all governments of the hemisphere to make the Democratic Charter even more, much more than empty pieces of paper, to make it a living document. The Charter commits us to help one another with our democratic institutions that are threatened. The Charter can be a punitive instrument, providing for sanctions when a serious challenge to our democratic order occurs. But it is also an instrument for providing technical assistance and moral encouragement to prevent democratic erosion early in the game, so to speak. Let us strengthen the Charter and not be afraid to use it, end of quote. Mr. Chairman, these words compel us, in my view, to make progress and act. Now more than ever, and so the United States looks to our fellow OAS delegations to help revitalize or realize the full Inter-American Action Plan on Democratic Governance, adopted at the 9th Summit. We are proud to be collaborating on efforts through the Permanent Council that support protective use of the Democratic Charter and enhanced interparliamentary cooperation. We also commend the efforts of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights for highlighting threats to democracy and human rights in the region, and for holding all of us, including the United States, to account. The U.S. was pleased to welcome the Commission to California for its 186th period of sessions just last month at UCLA. We commend the Commission because deepening respect for democratic governance, human rights, and fundamental freedoms is a top priority for the United States and President Biden. Recognizing human rights at home is a critical part of the President's foreign policy vision. We can't be credible advocates for democracy and human rights abroad if we're not demonstrating that commitment, those principles at our very home countries. The United States is proud of the role we play in advancing human rights and fundamental freedoms in the Americas and across the globe. None of us are perfect, as all of us know, but we strive to live up to our highest ideals and principles. We work to empower, defend, and lift up human rights defenders in all their forms, and to counter respective tactics against citizens, dissidents, academics, journalists, and others targeted by authoritarian regimes. Last month, President Biden co-hosted the Second Summit for Democracy, along with leaders from Costa Rica, the Netherlands, the Republic of Korea, and Zambia, where we demonstrated that democracies can deliver and are delivering for their people. The gathering's outcome declaration, which many OAS members have endorsed, underscored the following, and I quote from it: "Freedom and democracy are strengthened through cooperation, and we commit to building strategic, domestic, regional, and global partnerships that are more assertive in countering authoritarianism and corruption, and that demonstrate the democracy delivers peace, stability, and prosperity for all." End of quote. President Biden and I thank the OAS and the American Commission of Women, the CIM as it's called, supporting Summit for Democracy activities. We celebrate the 75th anniversary of CIM this year, in fact, and the visionary leadership of its very first president, the Pan-American feminist Doris Stevens. It is wholly fitting, in my view, that Summit participants committed to redouble their efforts to protect and uphold the rights of women and girls in all their diversity, cognizant that women's rights are human rights. We also made major commitments at the Summit to Democracy, including President Biden's announcement of up to $690 million over the next fiscal year for the Presidential Initiative for Democratic Renewal, supporting efforts at home and around the globe to make our democracies more resilient by bolstering democratic reformers and independent journalists, defending free and fair elections, and advancing anti-corruption campaigns. Colleagues, at the same time, we must recognize that inclusive economic growth remains essential to safeguard democracy. Without job creation and investment, the fragility of democracy quickly becomes apparent. Similarly, without security and law enforcement, democracy becomes vulnerable. Governments must provide freedom from fear for its citizens if democracy is to thrive. We all understand that democratic consolidation is not possible without a commitment to inclusive economic growth and citizen security. Failure to recognize the interdependence ensures the permanent fragility of democracy. Allow me to touch on a few specific challenges and opportunities, and I emphasize both challenges and opportunities. We are impacting our approach to the region and here at the Organization of American States. And I want to commend the OAS recent efforts to identify ways to help Haiti address its acute and deteriorating security, political and health crisis as well. Haiti's current lack of stability is critical to the people of that country, obviously, but it is also important to our region as a whole. There are some encouraging steps in Haiti. On February 6th was the appointment of the High Transition Council and the naming of Supreme Court judges. The OAS, I know, is working hard to play a supportive role, but Haiti's political parties, civil society, the diaspora, the private sector must also play a role in this process, working together in the interest of the Haitian people. Those who impede this process of the welfare of the Haitian people will continue to face the possibility of U.S. sanctions. We also will continue to provide support of humanitarian efforts to ensure vulnerable groups have access to food, water, and health services. We remain committed to working with our international partners, including through our vice chairmanship of the new OAS Working Group on Haiti, and to aid Haiti in combating gang violence and mitigate its security threats, while creating the conditions, we hope, for Haiti's political actors and other stakeholders to reach a political accord and hold elections in that country. Mr. Chairman, the situation in Nicaragua, remains a serious concern for our inter-American community as well. And while the United States believes the recent decision of the Nicaraguan government to release political prisoners was certainly a welcome step, it did not resolve the underlying concerns about the deterioration of human rights and the rule of law. In fact, the decision of the government of Nicaragua to revoke the citizenship and seize assets of these political prisoners, as well as those of an additional 94 individuals, and Bishop Rolando Alvarez negates almost any goodwill that the release may have generated by the Ortega Murillo regime. OAS member states must keep up the pressure, in my view. We will work to ensure the adoption of strong resolution again this year at the June General Assembly. We also continue to stand with the people of Venezuela. Mr. Chairman, we join the international community, including the OAS, in welcoming the resumption of negotiations between the opposition and the Maduro regime. We also will do everything within our ability to help Venezuela move toward the restoration of democracy. The Venezuelan people should be allowed to exercise their rights to choose their leaders and move on to reform corruption and repression. At the same time, the Biden administration will continue to support efforts at the OAS to ensure that the Maduro regime is held accountable for atrocities committed against Venezuelans. We have long made clear our willingness to review the sanctions posture posted on concrete steps towards a democratic solution in Venezuela and to reimpose sanctions should the Maduro government fail to follow through on its commitments. Let me also applaud the OAS states for standing in solidarity with the Ukraine since Russia's brutal full-scale invasion. This family of American democracies was one of the first multinational bodies outside of Europe to demonstrate its solidarity with the people of Ukraine, including suspending Russia from its membership as a permanent observer of this organization. I want to say a few words, if I can, as well, in my concluding words to you, that continues to inform our work in this hemisphere, and here at the Organization of States, American States, as well. And that is the importance of social inclusion. Advancing racial equality and justice in our foreign policy is essential to the United States' national security and strengthening of democracies around the world. As democracy continues to open the door to sectors of societies that have been historically excluded, we are finally seeing throughout the Americas a real rethinking and a re-understanding of what countries represent. For our part, on President Biden's first day in public office and as president, he signed the executive order called Advancing Racial Equality and Support for Underserved Communities through the Federal Government, end of quote. Today, our hemisphere stands at a pivotal crossroads. A rising generation born in the Americas, applying the technologies of the 21st century and enriched by the diversity of multicultural societies, stands poised to lead in the years to come. The generation that will gather around this table in the years and months ahead will be a new generation of Americans, ones that we need to listen to and understand. They're urging our democracies and the Organization of American States to address issues of poverty, inequality, and social exclusion, and to do so within a context that recognizes that social justice is vital for the longevity and very legitimacy of our political institutions. The OAS must play an active role in engaging these future leaders as champions of democratic and representative institutions to further support the education of our region, young people. I'm pleased, by the way, to announce today a $250,000 contribution for supplementary scholarships for eligible beneficiaries of the Leo Rowe Pan American Fund. This will enable more students from the Americas to study here in the United States. During and following his tenure as Director General of the Pan American Union, Dr. Rowe was devoted to fostering understanding within the Americas and promoting education. The President and I are advocates of this enduring legacy. Ultimately, the OAS is a product of who we are as member states. That is why we must come together to ensure that the OAS can meet the challenges and seize the opportunities of the 21st century. President Biden stands ready to work with all of us. I want to emphasize that last point. I begin almost every talk I give about the Americas by talking about the optimism I have for the Americas. Many of us, when we gather to discuss the issues of our region, we begin by citing the problems that exist. I know the problems. All of you around this table know the problems. But we need to focus on as well the wonderful riches we have, the opportunities we have. The days of treating the Americas as sort of an adopted child of our hemisphere must end. We need to recognize the tremendous wealth and opportunity, the human resources, the natural resources that exist within our Americas. And so in addition to our comments about things that need some assistance and support, we recognize all of that. But let us also remind our citizens of the great opportunities that the Americas provide to our people and to the future of the world, for that matter. So I'm delighted once again to have been invited to come by this morning and share some thoughts, to once again express the enduring support of my President and good friend, Joe Biden, and to tell you we'll do everything we can to be supportive of the Organization of American States and supportive of our Americas. Thank you all very, very much.
Muchas gracias, senador Dodd, por el mensaje que ha compartido con nosotros en la mañana de hoy. Al concluir su intervención, quisiera señalar, señor Dodd, colegas embajadores, señor secretario y secretario general adjunto, que es un gusto estar presidiendo esta sesión, que todos esperamos que sea el reflejo de una mirada refrescante en nuestra organización para lograr que efectivamente alcancemos una integración mayor en todos sus miembros para avanzar en compromisos fácticos que reflejen una unión al más alto nivel de nuestros acuerdos, decisiones que adoptamos y que se manifiesten en resoluciones, declaraciones, convenciones y otros instrumentos interamericanos, pero básicamente en la realidad de nuestra gente, del continente. Tengo el honor de ofrecer la palabra a los distinguidos coordinadores de los grupos regionales que deseen hacer uso de la misma. Se pueden inscribir, señores, si estamos... Ya están inscritos. A ver si me da la vista. Bahamas. Adelante, por favor.
Good morning. Secretary General Luis Almagro, Assistant Secretary General Nestor Mendez, Senator Christopher Dodd, Special Presidential Advisor for the Americas of the Government of the United States, Chair of the Permanent Council, Ambassador Washington Abdallah of Uruguay, Dean of the Corps of Permanent Representatives, Sir Ronald Sanders of Antigua and Barbuda. At the outset, on behalf of the caucus of CARICOM countries, I would like to thank you, Chair, and the proposing delegation for the convening of this morning's Protocolary meeting. CARICOM joins all member states in commemorating the convening of the first International Conference of American States on April 14th, more than 130 years ago, which resulted in the formation of the precursor to this organization, the International Union of American Republics. That seminal moment in history, at the time breathing life into a Bolivarian dream for Pan-American unity, solidarity, neighborliness that was deferred but thankfully not denied, laid the foundations for the establishment of the world's oldest regional organization, the Organization of American States. We do not simply gather here today to celebrate our genesis, however, but what this organization has done since its inception. The indelible mark of the organization on the development of the Americas is undeniable, and this legacy includes, amongst other achievements, the work the OAS has done on strengthening democracy and supporting elections, including the adoption of the Inter-American Democratic Charter in 2001, which has contributed to the hemispheric shift from a region plagued by dictatorship to one of the most democratic regions in the world. The role that the OAS played in Pacific settlements of disputes across the hemisphere and continues to play in the management of border disputes. Novel collaborative mechanisms such as those fostering a multidimensional approach to security, including the Inter-American Drug Abuse Control Commission, CICAD, the Inter-American Committee Against Terrorism, CITE, the Inter-American Convention Against the Illicit Manufacturing of and Trafficking in Arms, SIFTA, and the mechanism for follow-up on the implementation of the Inter-American Convention Against Corruption, MESIC, to support member states' efforts to curb the scourge of trafficking in illicit drugs and firearms, which have fueled the ascendancy of the region to the status of being one of the world's most violent, to counteract terrorism and to address challenges with corruption which undermine effectiveness of and trust in government. The long-standing primacy that the OAS has placed on development cooperation, including facilitation of thousands of opportunities for training, scholarships, and human development through perhaps one of the most noted and prestigious scholarship programs in the hemisphere. Indeed, if the OAS did not exist, it would certainly need to be created. While only one of the countries of the CARICOM region is a founding member of the OAS, our sister country, Haiti, as the countries of the region successfully achieved independence and joined the ranks of membership during the latter decades of the 20th century, we've made our contributions through infusing the OAS with additional perspective, through leadership within the OAS, through the service offered by 4 CARICOM nationals as Assistant Secretary General, including our current Assistant Secretary General, Nestor Mendez, and in other key positions such as the Executive Secretary for Integral Development. Despite the rich legacy of the OAS, we know that this organization is not perfect and has not always lived up to its own standards and principles around promotion of democracy, respect for sovereignty, and commitment to human rights. It is therefore imperative that this organization be re-examined by its member states to ensure that it is responsive to the political, social, and economic imperatives of our time, and that it be geared to dealing with future global and hemispheric challenges with agility and purpose. Given ours is one of the most vulnerable hemispheres in the world to the impact of climate change, and particularly climate-fueled natural disasters, the OAS must decisively join the fight against climate change and towards climate action and justice. As the scourge of racial and gender-based discrimination continues to plague the Americas, we need an OAS that more stridently protects the innate and God-given rights of all, particularly the most vulnerable amongst us, and does so without fear or without favor. If this organization is to survive and thrive, then we must, as member states, must ensure it has the capacity to do so. We cannot claim to value the organization, but yet accept the chronic underfunding of the regular fund budget and adopt a laissez-faire approach to payment of quotas. If our organization is to become as responsive, impactful, and relevant as we profess to want, then we have to summon the political will and commitment to make the changes that it needs urgently. In closing, we, the CARICOM group of countries, emphasize the primary and enduring conviction expressed in this organization's charter that, and I quote, "The historic mission of America is to offer to a man a land of liberty and a favorable environment for the development of his personality and the realization of his just aspirations." Close quotes. This, Chair, we believe is our ultimate goal. This is the North Star of our collective work. Let us take this morning's commemoration of our organization's history as a moment to both reflect and recommit to the OAS. The countries of CARICOM are committed partners in the collective task of continuing to build an OAS capable of meaningfully contributing to the fulfillment of the dreams and aspirations of our peoples in all our capitals, in all our towns, and in all our villages, in larger freedom. I thank you for your attention.
Tiene la palabra la señora representante de Panamá.
Gracias, señor presidente. Señor secretario general Luis Almagro, señor secretario general adjunto Néstor Méndez, representantes permanentes e interinos, representantes de los estados observadores. Me honra tomar la palabra en nombre de los países miembros del Sistema de Integración Centroamericana, SICA, en la Organización de los Estados Americanos, Belice, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, República Dominicana y en nombre de mi país, Panamá. En primer lugar, queremos felicitar al embajador Washington Abdalá, representante permanente del Uruguay, al asumir la presidencia del Consejo Permanente, expresarle a usted y a su delegación la disposición de nuestras delegaciones para apoyar y colaborar con su gestión. Agradecemos a la delegación de Estados Unidos y a su embajador Frank Mora por la convocatoria de esta sesión protocolar para conmemorar el Día de las Américas, fecha fundacional de la Unión de las Repúblicas Americanas, luego llamada Unión Panamericana, que dio paso a su vez a la Organización de los Estados Americanos, OEA. De igual manera, agradecemos la valiosa presentación del senador Christopher Dodd, asesor presidencial especial para las Américas del Gobierno de los Estados Unidos, de la cual hemos tomado debida nota. Estimados y estimadas colegas, conmemorar el Día de las Américas y la Semana Panamericana es ocasión propicia para reflexionar sobre nuestra identidad como pueblos americanos y sobre el papel que desempeñamos en la comunidad internacional. Los Estados miembros que estamos representando a nuestros países en esta Casa de las Américas formamos parte de una región multiétnica, geográficamente diversa, con una riqueza natural y cultural inigualable. Desde el extremo norte al sur de nuestro continente, pasando por el Istmo Centroamericano y el Caribe, cada país, con su propia historia, tradiciones, idiosincrasia y niveles de desarrollo, aspira al bienestar de sus pueblos y a alcanzar su más alto destino. El ideario panamericano de ayuda mutua y cooperación internacional está arraigado en la propia historia de nuestro continente. El Congreso Anfitriónico de Panamá, convocado por Simón Bolívar en 1826, fue el precursor de una asociación solidaria de Estados americanos en favor de la paz, la libertad, la justicia y el imperio de la ley. Siguiendo ese espíritu colectivo de alianzas para lograr los objetivos de la emancipación y solucionar los problemas comunes desde el respeto recíproco, los Congresos Americanos de Lima de 1847, 1864, 1877 y el de Santiago en 1856 sentaron bases fundamentales de las relaciones de los países en el continente y de la codificación del derecho internacional. Los principios de no intervención, integridad territorial, el no reconocimiento de territorios despojados por la fuerza, la renuncia a la guerra y la sumisión al arbitraje ante disputas internacionales, la igualdad de los estados, entre otros. La primera Conferencia Internacional Americana de Washington de 1889-1890 será el punto de inflexión para el desarrollo del ideario panamericano y la construcción del entramado jurídico e institucional del sistema interamericano que hoy conocemos, a través del cual continuamos los países del continente compartiendo aspiraciones de bienestar, intereses y desafíos comunes. Señor presidente, nuestra región es una región de paz, de renovado compromiso panamericano para seguir alcanzando objetivos comunes, seguir construyendo instancias de solución para los problemas que nunca se dieron y para enfrentar las nuevas complejidades que nos aquejan mediante el diálogo franco, político y el recíproco respeto. A lo largo del siglo XX, en las conferencias panamericanas logramos acuerdos necesarios para la creación de la Oficina Panamericana en 1902, hoy la Organización Panamericana de la Salud, la Comisión Interamericana de Mujeres, CIM, en 1928, y aprobamos la Carta de la Organización de los Estados Americanos en 1948. En la Semana Panamericana, en nombre de países miembros del Sistema de Integración Centroamericana SICA en la Organización de los Estados Americanos, Belice, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, República Dominicana y en nombre de mi país, Panamá, reconocemos el valor de la solidaridad americana desde su génesis y del sistema interamericano que juntos hemos construido para el avance de la democracia, la protección de los derechos humanos, la seguridad y el desarrollo integral de la región. Ponemos de relieve también, señor presidente, que existen desafíos estructurales no superados como la pobreza, la desigualdad y la discriminación que afectan especialmente a subregiones de nuestro continente y que existen desafíos emergentes o exacerbados por la pandemia del COVID-19 y el cambio climático que requieren ser abordados de manera urgente y con renovado espíritu panamericano debido al impacto diferenciado que tienen subregiones y en poblaciones más vulnerables. La situación migratoria, la inseguridad alimentaria, la inequidad de género, la gestión de desastres naturales, el acceso a la salud, la educación, a las tecnologías de la información como determinantes indiscutibles del aprovechamiento de las oportunidades disponibles. Por ello, señor presidente, hacemos votos por el continuo fortalecimiento de nuestro sistema interamericano y la cooperación internacional orientada a consolidar sociedades más democráticas, estables, resilientes, inclusivas, con desarrollo sostenible y respetuosa de los derechos humanos. Con la venia de mis colegas, solo unas breves palabras en capacidad nacional, porque no puedo perder la oportunidad de reiterar la importancia que tiene para Panamá la Organización de los Estados Americanos y un multilateralismo concebido como herramienta eficaz para resolver los problemas que enfrentan nuestras naciones, por muy difíciles que sean, por muy lejos que puedan parecer las posiciones que nos enfrentan, es posible. Fue a través de la internacionalización de la causa panameña que logramos el perfeccionamiento de nuestra soberanía con la firma de los tratados Torrijos-Cartes, hecho que precisamente se concretó en este mismo edificio en 1977, y sí fue posible. Históricamente, Panamá ha fungido como un punto de encuentro uniendo al mundo no solo por su posición geográfica y como conectividad, sino por su disposición al diálogo. La puesta en práctica de los valores democráticos y la protección y respeto a los derechos humanos no son negociables para Panamá y siempre estará dispuesta a trabajar no con una sola mano, sino con ambas, para sumar y llegar a los acuerdos necesarios por el desarrollo integral, la convivencia pacífica en nuestra región y por el fortalecimiento de su democracia. Muchas gracias.
Señor representante de Chile, tiene usted la palabra.
Muchas gracias, presidente. Muy buenos días a todas y todos. Como delegación coordinadora del Grupo 10, Chile, los saludo a usted, presidente, en este inicio de sus labores, primer consejo. Les desea todo el éxito y colaboración del grupo, que es su grupo. Del mismo modo que honra, saluda, felicita la gestión de su antecesor, el embajador Anthony Philip Spencer, por su gran trabajo encabezando el consejo. El Grupo 10, presidente, saluda esta conmemoración y agradece la presentación del senador Christopher Dodd, de la que tomamos debida nota, especialmente de sus contenidos, porque esta conmemoración nos parece relevante porque hoy remarcamos el compromiso de nuestros estados con el multilateralismo, especialmente en un hemisferio marcado por desigualdades tan profundas que se expresan cotidianamente en la vida de quienes viven en esta región, a quienes representamos. Hablamos de desigualdades fundadas en el ingreso, desigualdades de género, segregaciones raciales, grupos enormes de personas excluidas de derechos tan elementales como acceder al agua, la salud o la educación. Enfrentar cada una de estas desigualdades es fundamental para las democracias y muchas de sus aristas, muchas de las expresiones de estas desigualdades necesitan la acción concertada de nuestras naciones, porque solo así es posible trabajar sobre ellas. Tenemos también del hemisferio, presidente, grandes oportunidades. En no pocas materias nuestros países son complementarios. Lo vemos en la energía, en una historia común de descolonización, en nuestras lenguas, que es una barrera, pero también son otra cosa. Tal como son las distancias geográficas y las diversidades culturales, son una oportunidad de aprender entre todos y todas. Compartimos esa mirada de un desarrollo integral, capaz de abrazar nuestra diversidad, en pleno compromiso con la democracia, los derechos humanos y el derecho internacional como base esencial del panamericanismo. Trabajamos también por la seguridad multidimensional, reto prioritario para garantizar la calidad de vida a nuestros pueblos y fortalecer las democracias. Tenemos también desafíos nuevos que demuestran cada día lo necesario, lo imprescindible de miradas capaces de cruzar las fronteras. Hablamos de cambio climático, hablamos de la capacidad de prevenir, actuar y de lograr resiliencia frente a las pandemias, hablamos de los efectos de los flujos migratorios masivos, por solo mencionar 3 ejemplos muy urgentes de fenómenos que atraviesan nuestros límites y requieren, por tanto, miradas multilaterales capaces de abordarlos. Como vemos, presidente, tareas no nos faltan. Por ello, es más necesario que nunca integrar voluntades, capacidad autocrítica y propuestas para construir una organización de los Estados americanos que sea útil a mejorar el día a día de nuestros pueblos. Muchas gracias, presidente.
Señor representante de Canadá, tiene usted la palabra.
Thank you very much. Chair, let me start by thanking Ambassador Frank Mora for having given us this opportunity to hear this morning from Senator Dodd. Senator, thank you very much for your remarks this morning. Let me also thank you, President, as well as the Secretary General, Luis Almagro, and Assistant Secretary General Nestor Mendez. Canada is very pleased this morning to join with everybody in commemorating the Pan American Day, marking the formation in 1890 of the organization that would become the precursor to today's Organization of American States. And a colleague mentioned to me this morning that, in fact, we're celebrating a party that happened without us when it took place in the late 1890s. But we're very pleased to have been able to join the rest of you in this organization in 1990. And in fact, all joking aside, by geography, by history, Canada's always been a country of the Americas, and by choice as well. We're proud of our contributions and our collaboration in this organization. So today, though, we come together not to talk about our own contributions, but what we've been able to do as a community in our hemisphere and in our organization, and what we've achieved. And in Canada's view, there's much to celebrate, and I picked up on the enthusiasm that Senator Dodd brought in his remarks and his enthusiasm for the region. And it's easy to remember the challenges that we face, but there's much to celebrate. We've made incredible progress on a wide range of issues. We've had several challenging years with COVID, but we've made progress on gender equality. We've made progress on diversity. We've made progress on peace and security, and we've made progress on development and on the well-being of our citizens. We have much more to do. We have concrete outcomes from the recent Summit of the Americas that charge us to deliver real future progress on health, on climate change, on clean energy, on digital transformation, on democratic governance, and on migration. Key among these is the top priority of strengthening and safeguarding democracy, reflected through DECO's excellent election observation missions, the 2 recent summits for democracy, and our ongoing work to implement the Inter-American Democratic Charter. As we look to shore up this fundamental pillar of the OAS, we're reminded of the importance of multilateralism. Multilateralism is important. It's challenging and it's hard work. It requires, if I can pick up on a comment by Senator Dodd, all members fulfill their obligations. Several of our members, including Haiti, Venezuela, and Nicaragua, struggle to fulfill their promise and their potential. We must stand by them, and we must stand by our principles and commitments and provide all of the necessary support so that our commitments to human rights and our commitments to democracy can be met, including our commitment that the peoples of the Americas have a right to democracy and their governments have an obligation to promote and to defend it. To conclude, on this Pan American Day, let's remember what we've already created, and that what we have delivered so far is nothing short of remarkable. The OAS and its affiliated bodies are a force for good in this hemisphere. Canada is thankful for the friendship, the cooperation, and the hard work of the staff of the member states and the permanent observers of this, our home of the Americas. Thank you.
Señor representante de los Estados Unidos, tiene usted la palabra.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for convening today's protocolary meeting of the Permanent Council and for the opportunity to give Special Presidential Advisor Chris Dodd the opportunity to express this administration's commitment to the hemisphere and indeed to this premier multilateral institution in the hemisphere. I'd like to take just this opportunity, if I may, Mr. Chairman, to invite all interested delegations to a book talk and coffee reception organized in recognition of the Pan American Week by the U.S. Permanent Mission at the Columbus Memorial Library this Thursday at 3:30. The talk will focus on the newest book released by Ambassador Luigi Einaudi, former U.S. Ambassador to the OAS, Assistant Secretary General, and Acting Secretary General. The book is entitled Learning Diplomacy and Oral History, which I share here with us. Ambassador Einaudi will share his perspectives with us from his long and distinguished career in academia, the Pentagon, and his quarter century of public service at the State Department, and of course here at the OAS. Ambassador John Maisto, former U.S. Permanent Representative to the OAS and U.S. Ambassador to Nicaragua and Venezuela, will serve as moderator. Also participating in the talk will be Arturo Valenzuela, Emeritus Professor of Government and International Service at Georgetown University and former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State, and Joanna Mendelsohn Foreman, Adjunct Professor at American University. Mr. Chairman, now I'm pleased to share with the Council a short video presentation highlighting youth voices from the 9th Summit of the Americas and our efforts in support of the inaugural City Summit of the Americas to be held later this month in Denver, Colorado. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Adelante, se proyecte.
The most important issue to me is health education,
anti-corruption,
diversifying the international affairs community,
youth engagement, healthcare,
single mothers living in rural communities,
COVID-19 recovery.
Well, so far at the summit, I had the opportunity to meet the Secretary of State, and he provided some points and some questions that really got me thinking.
When the Secretary General spoke, I was so enthralled by her interview.
Listening to Administrator Power discuss with all of us the importance of being at the table has been a huge highlight of my experience here at the summit.
I have the opportunity to speak about what is really happening in my country, how young people are very concerned about these issues.
Being able to engage on a youth-to-youth basis with the people here has been amazing.
Meeting with other colleagues, brainstorming ideas, get inspired.
I'm here to bring my voice and tell people that we are here at the table.
Gracias. Representante de Haití, tiene usted la palabra.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, j'aimerais profiter de cette occasion pour vous remercier d'avoir inclus ce point à l'ordre du jour de ce Conseil permanent, à savoir la célébration de l'histoire panaméricaine. On veut faire référence ici à la première conférence panaméricaine où les États-Unis voulaient développer des relations avec ses voisins du Sud. Je profite aussi de cette occasion pour saluer la présence du sénateur Christopher Dodd, conseiller spécial du président des États-Unis d'Amérique. Honorable sénateur, Haïti vous remercie pour les efforts entrepris par votre pays pour continuer à l'aider à sortir de cette crise multidimensionnelle et aussi pour les efforts développés par votre pays pour renforcer la démocratie dans la région des Amériques. Monsieur le Président, puisqu'il est question de panaméricanisme, permettez-moi de faire référence à l'histoire pour rappeler que bien avant la tenue de cette conférence, la nouvelle République d'Haïti a fait preuve d'une grande tendance pour le multilatéralisme en accordant aux leaders de la région, Miranda, Bolivar, des navires, des armes, des munitions pour procéder à la libération des peuples des Amériques, la Grande Colombie à cette époque. Après avoir attribué ces moyens aux leaders sud-américains, le président Alexandre Pétion leur a demandé seulement de procéder à la libération des esclaves partout où vous allez libérer les Noirs qui se trouvent dans vos pays. Mais ironiquement, Monsieur le Président, le 14 avril 1890, Haïti n'a pas été invité à cette première conférence qui lançait le panaméricanisme. Haïti n'a pas été invité seulement parce que, à cette époque, Haïti était le mauvais élève de la classe. Plus de 200 ans après, Haïti continue à être le mauvais élève de la classe, puisque nous continuons à affronter une crise multidimensionnelle où nous demandons l'appui des pays de la région. Il n'est pas suffisant qu'on accorde de l'importance au dossier d'Haïti, mais il faut accorder le bénéfice de l'urgence à Haïti. Je ne cesse jamais de le répéter ici à cette séance. Il y a des efforts qui ont été faits au sein de la région. Des résolutions ont été signées par les chanceliers de la région. Il y a un groupe de travail qui travaille sur Haïti au sein de l'OEA. Nous remercions les États pour ces efforts. Mais il nous faut davantage parce que les gens meurent en Haïti. Pas plus tard que la semaine dernière, des commissariats ont été incendiés, des policiers ont été assassinés. Pas plus tard que hier, le consul honoraire de Saint-Kitts-et-Nevis a été attaqué par des gangs armés. L'urgence, le dossier est urgent. Il nous faut, au nom de la solidarité internationale, au nom de la démocratie, il faut continuer à appuyer les efforts faits par le gouvernement haïtien. On ne peut pas attendre. Il y a beaucoup. On ne doit pas s'arrêter seulement dans les dossiers, il faut des actes. Donc ma délégation a voulu profiter de cette conférence pour mettre l'emphase sur le dossier d'Haïti, pour que Haïti ne soit pas relégué au second plan, mais pour que l'urgence soit accordée à Haïti. Merci.
Señor representante de Antigua y Barbuda, tiene usted la palabra.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, it wasn't my intention to speak this morning. The coordinator of the CARICOM group having spoken on behalf of the entire group. But as the Dean of the Corps, I did not think I could allow the opportunity of Senator Christopher Dodd being here not to say a few words. First of all, I thank Ambassador Moro and you, Mr. Chairman, for organizing this event. I'm particularly pleased to see you in the chair, and as this is your first meeting, sir, may I take this opportunity to pledge my support for your term. Senator Dodd, as we all know, is a champion of our hemisphere. I think all of us are of the view that President Biden could not have chosen a better person to be his advisor on affairs, on matters connected to this hemisphere. He has wide experience, he has been a true friend, and all of us who watched his performance before, during, and after the Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles know how diligently he worked, how sensitive he was to each of our countries in the way in which that conference was organized. So we are very grateful to see him here this morning, and welcome, sir. This Pan American Week is about many things. Part of what it is about is this Organization of American States. It is also about the Inter-American Democratic Charter, as Senator Dodd so rightly pointed out. I happen to be a friend of the Inter-American Democratic Charter, appointed by President Jimmy Carter, but on leave while I carry out my duties here as a representative of my country. But I cannot stress enough the importance of that charter to the lives and livelihoods and the future of the people of the Americas. It is sad that we have remarked on Simón Bolívar so many times here this morning, and yet his native country, Venezuela, is not a part of this assembly at this time. That is a matter of regret. It is equally a matter of regret that other countries, Nicaragua, a case in point, has chosen to withdraw from the organization effective November of this year, and done so because of a departure from the principles and objectives both of the OAS Charter and the Inter-American Democratic Charter, whose principles and objectives are what are the bedrock of the future, the happiness of the people of our hemisphere, and that is freedom. Freedom to speak, freedom to dissent, freedom to protest, freedom to be creative, freedom to contribute to the advancement of our hemisphere. Without that freedom, we will not progress. But several of the speakers here today, and Senator Dodd, you yourself, have drawn attention to the fact that collectively, this hemisphere is probably the richest region of the world in terms of its natural resources. I ask you to mention one thing that we do not produce: oil, gas, forestry, agriculture, logistics, gold, diamonds, uranium, bauxite, rare earth, tourism, financial services. What is there in the world that we do not do and cannot do better if we could only integrate our resources to make this hemisphere a force to be reckoned with in the world? So I end this by saying, Senator Dodd, it was a pleasure to hear you speak this morning. I believe that what you have said will inspire us all to strengthen multilateral cooperation, especially through this organization, the Organization of American States, which we set up to serve all our peoples, and which can continue to do so if we adhere to the principles and objectives set out both in its charter and in the Inter-American Democratic Charter, at the root of all of which is the freedom which is precious to all of us, whether we came out of slavery, whether we came out of servitude, whether we came out of being immigrants from old lands to this new hemisphere. That is what we must preserve and protect to advance our hemispheric interest. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Muchas gracias entonces a todas las delegaciones por sus valiosas e interesantes intervenciones. Con esto damos por concluida esta sesión protocolar. Agradezco a todos la presencia. Se levanta la sesión.